have to share as well, right? Right. And so this morning, Show Up Saturday, and this Saturday morning series is all about encouraging, everyone who follows me, but also to share a little bit of how I show up and how I try to show up, and as a source of encouragement for those, that choose to follow. So you don't have to do it, but it's just, something that I like to share. And I get a lot of questions about how I do what I do, why I do what I do, and, how do I make it all happen? First and foremost, God makes it all happen. If it was not for the Lord who was on my side, I don't know where I'd be. Well, I do know where I'd be. I'd be in prison. I'd be in prison somewhere, or in a hospital institution, or maybe in a grave. So I do know where I would be. Hospital, prison, or in grave. But because the Lord on my life is the only reason I'm able to do anything. So I can't live, breathe, and move without Him. But in addition to that, do you know a good vulnerable celeb? I'm not sure if I know that. Do I know who a good vulnerable celeb is? No, I don't. Sorry. So today we're talking about vulnerability. And I actually learned this from a young man when I started out doing social media. A young man, Selena Gomez is very vulnerable. I see what you're saying. Yes. In how she shares her life. Yes, in making her life open to everyone. Thank you. I wasn't sure what you were saying about that. But yes, Selena Gomez, she recently came out and shared that she has lupus, and that her best friend, or one of her good friends, donated a kidney. And so that was very vulnerable of her to expose herself like that, because in the world of Hollywood, that's not too common. So I don't know a lot about Hollywood or even celebrities. But yes, thank you for that. So in the work when I was starting out with social media, this young man, he was like, Rev, you got to get you some photos out there. You got to get some videos, And I was like, I ain't doing all that. And he was like, look, you got to be vulnerable. And I was like, Josiah, I don't know what you mean by that. And he really helped me understand that vulnerability is one of the keys to success. Like, to really live out what God has called you to do, there's a level of vulnerability, right? So we make ourselves vulnerable when we say yes to the assignment, but we also make ourselves vulnerable as we go through the process, dealing with our successes and our failures, the lessons learned, and the difficulties, in addition to the celebrations along the way. And so what I wanted to share with you all is this week, last week we talked about confidence, showing up confidently. But I want to encourage someone, especially those of you that are really trying to make some moves out there. Some of you are really grinding and trying to make some moves and trying to make some things happen. And part of the way that you will be successful is allowing yourself to be vulnerable and stand in your truth. And tell your story, and not be afraid to let people know that every day isn't a great day. Every season hasn't been rosy. There have been ups and there have been downs. There have been inclines and declines. There have been seasons of abundance and seasons of lack. And just really standing in your truth. And one of the ways I've been challenged to be vulnerable is this. Some of you may know I have my nephew now. He's my foster son. He's my nephew, but he's also my foster son now. His mother, my cousin, passed away, sadly, earlier this year, and he became mine, and I love him to death. But the whole process has been very challenging for our family. The whole process has been challenging for our family. So this is the way I've been challenged to be vulnerable, because the RFA, the person who is responsible to do the paperwork and the interviewing and the checking of your home and the this and that, and the person who's responsible to do all the background checks, all the stuff to know your ins and outs. She's done everything except examine my behind, right? So, and as for blood samples. But part of how I've had to be vulnerable is not only is she our RFA, but she's also a young lady who attended a conference that I preached at, right? And so, it's a level of vulnerability with her, because she knows me as the pastor preacher as well, right? So when she came to my house, she didn't know whose house she was coming to, because most people call me Reverend Najuma, but my first name is Domely. And so on the paperwork, it didn't say Reverend Najuma. It says Domely Smith, because that's my legal, that's the legal business name. Even though my full name is Domely Najuma Smith Pollard, the paperwork she had says Domely Smith. So when she came to the house to do the interviews and all that, she didn't know whose house she was coming to. And so when I opened the door, she was like, Reverend Najuma. Whoa. And as a result, she's had to really get in my life, right? And just last week, the conference where I preached at, she was in attendance because she attends a lot of the women's conferences that I have preached at and I preach at. And so, but she's had to get in my business, right? And what it did for me is I had to immediately, if there was anything about my story that I was uncomfortable with, I had to be comfortable with it in this season, because she's had to ask some very personal questions. She's had to ask some stuff that I really wasn't ready to share with anybody out in the open. But nevertheless, because my truth is my truth, and it's okay. My story is my story. What is. There is no changing it. All of my life, good, bad, indifferent, ugly, pleasant, beautiful, horrible, the dreams and the nightmares have made me who I am today. And so I want to encourage you all out there, those of you out there trying to make moves and, really trying to be about, whatever it is that you want to do in life, and you're trying to get out there and get exposure. Part of your success will be allowing yourself to be vulnerable with people, and vulnerable but standing your truth. And I'm not saying you got to share the nitty-gritty, deep, details, but it's okay to share when you're hurting, when you're nervous, when you're up, when you're down. It's okay to be vulnerable, right? Because vulnerability, here's what vulnerability does. It lets other people know that, number one, you're real, right? You're not some fake fraud, phony, that's never had a rough time in life. That you're not just, sitting on your high horse, never struggled. People want to talk to and listen to and follow and be a part of and are attracted to people who also have lived. And to live doesn't mean every day's a good day. To live means you've had some good days and some horrible days. You've had some dreams come true and some nightmares come true, right? And so on this Saturday's Show Up Saturday, I want to encourage you all, especially those of you that are trying to make some moves and trying to make it happen and get somewhere, allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself and stand in your truth. It is what it is. And even if you've made some mistakes, it's all good. Everybody's made mistakes. Even if you've done some things that you're not entirely proud of. I remember the first time, it was years ago, I was doing a youth conference, and I had everybody standing up, and I said, now let me tell you about a young lady. And I went to tell them about this young lady who only dated dope dealers, who had gone to jail for a dope dealer, who had been shot at by some dope dealers. And I had to tell them this story because I was really trying to get across these young ladies about choices. And then I told them at the end, and I told them all the story, but I'm just giving you guys a paraphrase. But I said to them, now that young lady, she's preaching for you all today. And they were stunned. They were like, what? You, Pastor Jew, Reverend Juju? Yeah, me, right? But my vulnerability, let me tell you what the vulnerability did. The altar was full. The altar was full of young ladies who were trapped in, getting involved in, already in, thinking about getting in some stuff that they had no business getting into. And so my vulnerability allowed them to get free. And so your vulnerability with people will allow them, number one, to get free from whatever it is they're going through, but also your vulnerability will allow them to know that God is still able to deliver, and that none of us are too deep into whatever we've been in, that God can't pull us out. And that, life and living is not about perfection. It's about process. It's about progression. It's about getting there, about working on it. We talked about yesterday, working on it. And so it's okay to stand in your truth, and even if you don't have things worked out, it's okay to say, I don't have everything worked out. I don't have all the answers. So that will be part of your success. That's part of our success, think about, Bill Gates. Bill Gates had to be vulnerable enough at one time to tell the whole entire world that he started his business in his garage and he was broke, right? And so, if you just looked at Bill Gates today, you would think, Ivy League school, big office all his life. In a garage. And he's actually has shared pictures of that garage where he was broke starting out his business. And so thank you, Dr. Atlas. So I just want to encourage you this week, show up and allow yourself vulnerability. Allow yourself, and I'm not saying you got to share all the nitty-gritty details, right? Especially those of you that are running businesses, that want to run businesses, especially those of you doing ministry, that want to get in ministry, or you want to mentor, coach, whatever it is you want to do, or whatever your task is, whatever your job is. You may be a Rite Aid cashier clerk. Every now and then people vet and release to cashiers. And what a powerful cashier you'll be, or bank teller, or whatever. You could say, you know what, I've been there. What if more bank tellers were honest with people when we went to the bank and our accounts were in the negative, or check bounced, or we had to go and put some money in and the count is on zero? What if more bank tellers looked us in the eye and said, don't be embarrassed, I've been there too? Because they have. Not all of them maybe, but they have. What if more people at the post office says, I understand you got to get this package off rush, I've been there too, And so vulnerability, releases us to be free, releases people to be free. It's, a source of encouragement, but it also lets people know that it's not the end of the world, right? And it makes you a super powerful human being to be able to be vulnerable. So this week, I want to encourage you, show up in your vulnerability. Show up with people. Show up in your space and allow yourself to be vulnerable. It's all good. It really is. Jesus was vulnerable. Just in case, you want to quote Jesus. Jesus was vulnerable. When he was tired, he told his disciples, I'm going to pray. When he was hungry, he said, let's eat. When he was distressed, he went to the Garden of Gethsemane and asked God, please let the cup pass. And he said it 3 times. Right? And so even Jesus had a vulnerable moments, and it's okay for you and I to be vulnerable. It will allow us to be super successful, super powerful. Hey, Angela, I just saw you. It will allow us to be super powerful and super influential. People who are the most influential are the people who are often most vulnerable. I've even, and you often hear me talk about Richard Branson. I love Richard Branson. I follow him. I think he's an amazing human being. And he even has, he exposes his vulnerable moments as this multi-billionaire who, he's like in the top 1% of the most wealthiest people in the world, right? But even him allows himself to be vulnerable, and so we got to do that. As much fun as people poke, thank you, as much folk as Ola, as much folk as people poke at Oprah Winfrey, every time she's on a diet and she loses the weight and gains it back and loses the weight, that's a level of vulnerability that she's showing the world. Why? Because for other people who have weight issues that go up and down, for other people that have weight issues that go up and down, it's a sense of, hey, if Oprah's going through it, guess what? It ain't the end of the world if I'm going through it. Hey, Karen. And so, this week as you get ready to do whatever it is you got to do, allow vulnerability. Vulnerability gives other people freedom. It allows you to be free. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to come around pretending all the time. You can just be you, right? And that's what makes us super powerful human beings. So show up this week. Show up vulnerable. Allow yourself a little vulnerability, and know that it's all good. It empowers other people to be vulnerable, to show up in their truth. It releases people from this false sense of perfection, right? You get free from it. Other people that, that follow you will get free from it, and it makes you super powerful and influential. People want to talk to people who have been there, done that, got the mug and the t-shirt to prove it, right? They got the mug and the t-shirt to prove it, right? People want to talk to people. People want to be mentored, coached, followed, loved on by people who have been there, done that too.